My name is Jonathan Supovitz. I am a professor of education policy and leadership at the Graduate School of Education at the University of Pennsylvania. And I'm also the co-director of a policy organization called the Consortium for Policy Research in Education, which tries to bring researchers, policymakers, and practitioners together to address challenging education issues in our field. The thing that I want to focus on with my time here is to talk about the challenge of education reform as a challenge of scale. If you think about schools, everybody can identify a school that is a really strong school, whether it's in the suburbs or in the city. There are lots of examples of really fine schools. But the real challenge of education is how to do that at scale. As we speak, there are 100 million students in classrooms around the country. They're in about 100,000 schools and in about 14,000 districts. And so the real challenge of education reform is how we can provide strong experiences to all those students in all those schools in all those districts. If you look at charter schools, there are about 5,000 charter schools in the country, about 5 or 6% of the total number of schools. And there are charter schools that do really well and charter schools that don't do so well. But if we take the successes of charter schools, even if we take the successes of charter schools and we try and scale that up to serve the entire system, we're going to essentially replicate the same problem of the challenge of how we can provide educational opportunities to kids across the country, across schools and across districts. And that's really what I research. I study how we can improve the educational experiences of kids across systems of schools. This issue is exacerbated by the tradition of local control in the United States. And so unlike most countries in the world, the education system here in the US is very localized. And that we saw this play out in this recent battle over the Common Core state standards, where there was an effort to centralize even the standard system at a national level. And we got tremendous backlash, and it just reified the notion that education is really a state and local issue. So there's some things that we know to be true as we tackle education issues. One is that education is not going to solve some of the larger issues in our country. So poverty and inequity are not going to be resolved through the school system, and sometimes we try and use education to address larger social issues, but these are really issues of political will and social commitment, and those transcend education. But we also know that schools provide a really good opportunity for students to increase their life chances. So whether they are going on to college, to career, wherever they end up in adulthood, school is a really important factor in how their opportunities play out. So this is really what I focus on, which is how we think about tackling these problems of scale in education reform. And I really think of this in three ways. One is the structures that balance support and press for improvement. The second one is how we think about a culture of learning and improvement. And the third one is how we build the capacity of teachers and leaders in our system. And let me just walk through those three for a couple of minutes. So I'll start with the last one. How do we build capacity? Well, I was watching one of the Sunday morning news shows, and John McCain, who's the senator from Arizona, very well known, the chair of the Armed Services Committee, and he was asked about the fact that there have been 6 Navy accidents in the last year. And he said, Well, you know, funding has declined, and funding is related to training and preparation. And these accidents were problems of lack of training and lack of preparation. Well, just think about that in terms of education, where we've really decreased funding in our education systems. That has caused a decline in the opportunities for building capacity of teachers and leaders to really perform their jobs. And so this is an area where we really need to address not just funding issues, but really how we deliver powerful learning experiences to education professionals. Teachers spend most of their time in front of students, which is very different than in other countries, and there's relatively little ongoing professional capacity building in education. And so this is an area that both there are some really exciting things going on. There's new learning about coaching, about ways that we can use social networks to transfer knowledge across communities inside of schools, to focus on the practice, the work of teaching and leading, as opposed to just describing things about professional knowledge and skills, about content knowledge, for example, or about how to teach. It's how to embed certain practices into your day-to-day work. So that's one issue, which is building capacity. The second issue is an issue of how we build a culture of learning and improvement in our system. And this might seem paradoxical to some people, but there's actually a tension in education between performance and learning. Performance is a press for us to achieve certain outcomes, but learning is a process that we use to have kids build their knowledge and understanding and skill. And learning is a bumpy, uneven, sometimes fitful process. And so it's not going to be on a smooth scale. And really modern ways of thinking about learning require that kids have multiple entry points, that they have different contextualized problems, that they really encounter lots of exposure to lots of different experiences, and the old styles of direct delivery of lectures to kids just isn't going to cut it in our new understanding of how kids learn. So we need to think about embedding a culture of learning that we understand in a classroom into the systems and the cultures of schools and of districts. And that means that it's not a straight line towards performance, but that there's learning and change and adjustment and trial and error along the way. The third point I was trying to make was around structures that balance support and press. And in coming out of the No Child Left Behind era, there's really been an overemphasis on press for improvement. And so there's been a lot of accountability in the system, but not enough support. And so when I think about that, I think about the image of a really muscular arm of accountability and a really undeveloped and much less developed arm for support. And so I think we need to build the muscles on both sides of that equation. So the three things that I think really resolve or start to address this challenge of building education systems at scale are building structures that balance support and press, a culture of learning and improvement, and attending to the messier aspects of building capacity of both teachers and leaders.